Hey everyone. Okay, out here December 28th. Okay, we're kind of winding up the 2019 season. You can see in the background or the foreground, you can see the Redondo special. Taking some people out for rock fishing. Out here with my homeboy Kai. Man, it was cold when I woke up this morning. Sun's peeking through, and we're gonna have a good day, regardless of whether or not we catch fish. Okay, one of the best and most simple tips I can give any paddler is to maintain your center of gravity, okay? And by that I mean there's a center of gravity both vertically and laterally, right? And the more centered you are and the lower you are, the better off you're gonna be. So most of the kayak tossing occurs when you're either launching or you're landing. Assuming you can get past that, probably the most frequent way people toss their kayaks out on the open water is by twisting their torso only in an attempt to get something at the back of the kayak. And what that does is it takes your center of gravity and it will tilt it one way. And then at that point, if swell catches you, you're gonna go over. So to prevent that, what you want to do is, instead of just twisting your torso, you want to throw both legs over like so, and then at this point you maintain your center of gravity, and then you can reach back and grab whatever you need from the back of the kayak. Great tip to remember. Okay, so while I'm paddling out, I'm going to speak on the topic of safety, and specifically the VHF marine radio. So I carry a standard Horizon HX 870, and what you have to realize is that with these VHF marine radios, they work on a completely different frequency than the walkie-talkies that you buy on Amazon or Walmart. So if you come out here with a walkie-talkie, then you're not going to be able to communicate with people that have like a VHF marine radio, and you will not be able to hail the Coast Guard. And then the other kind of like neat feature that this specific VHF radio has is a feature called DSC. And so basically there's a built-in GPS. So if something horrible happens, you can not only relay that you are in trouble, but you can also relay your exact GPS coordinates. So, winter being a little bit more dangerous in terms of conditions, there are fewer boaters for help. It's always a good idea to kind of like make sure you have the right safety gear. And that's why I like this radio in particular. And of course, Standard Horizon is not the only game in town. Like ICOM is another good brand, and they have that feature as well. Okay, so one of the questions I had in the past was, hey honey badger, once I'm out on the open water, how do I go about taking a pee, or God forbid, drop a deuce? Number one is easy. I mean, you can carry like an empty water bottle and just pee into the water bottle. And it might be a good idea to label the bottle so that you know you're drinking H2O and not H2 honey badger. Unless you're into that kind of thing, and I'm not gonna judge. And by the way, urine, unless you're ill, as it comes out of the body, is indeed sterile. But you probably want to save that kind of stunt for if you get stranded on a deserted island, or as part of some bourbon-fueled parlor trick. And there is your honey badger voodoo nugget of knowledge for the day. You're welcome. Number two is going to be much more difficult, right? If you have to go, what you probably want to do is pull the drive out like so, and then I guess you would have to straddle your legs over the side of the kayak and then do your deed and pray to God that it's not a floater. If it is a floater, then you got to use this as your plunger. And so that's why I think this is such an important tool to have, right? It not only acts as a plunger in case of emergency, but you also use it for compliance for those unruly fish. Just make sure that no one's taking video. And as we leave the harbor, I want to give you guys a general description of Redondo Beach and the underwater canyon. So the underwater canyon will kind of extend in that direction. And there are portions of it that are like 700 feet. And then as you get closer to shore, the edge of the underwater canyon will kind of extend here in about roughly 150 feet of water. And then as you go further south, it will start to climb back up into shallow water about 40 feet. Okay, the sun is poking through the cloud cover, warming us up, brightening our mood. Thank you, Miss Sunshine. At this point, let me take you guys to Google Earth to give you a bird's eye view of what we're doing. So this area right here is the Redondo Beach area, and specifically we are launching out of King Harbor. Let me zoom in. So we are launching out of here. And then once you launch, you're going to have some choices. You can go north, south, west, or east. I would generally advise going east because I've never caught a fish in this area. And north is not the best option for most newbie kayak fishermen for a couple of reasons. Well, unless you are specifically targeting the Hermosa Artificial Reef. The reason number one is, in this area, generally speaking, in the afternoon, the winds will blow out of the southwest. So if you're done paddling and fishing here, you're gonna have to fight that wind coming back. Reason number two is you begin to lose the structure of the underwater canyon as you go north. So it's mostly flat in this area. And whenever you have a choice between just flat stuff and some kind of elevation change, you're always gonna wanna choose that elevation change. In general, elevation changes and structure will hold more fish. That's just reality. So that's gonna leave going west and going south. And going south is gonna be comforting for most new people, especially sticking close to the shore, because having sight of shore is comforting, and I totally get that. But the issue with going south is once you get past the fringe of the underwater canyon, and before you reach Malaga Cove, which is this area here, and this area is really productive. This is where the kelp and some of the rock structure starts. Very productive. But the stretch between the edge of the underwater canyon and Malaga Cove is pretty barren. I mean, it's kind of flat, 40, 50 feet, and there really isn't much happening here in this stretch. Okay, so we're paddling out of the harbor and we're kind of descending into the canyon. You can tell by the slope, we're descending into the canyon. So we're going from water that's about 30 feet inside the harbor, and now we're at about 160. So I had a question on one of my videos from someone asking about fish finders. This is the fish finder that I run. It is the Garmin 64CV, and I have a video posted on my YouTube channel that kind of goes through the Garmin lineup and why I chose this particular model. And so the single biggest difference between the Striker series and the EcoMap series is that the EcoMap series will come with built-in maps. So I hope this camera shows it, but here you have the built-in ocean maps and you can see the contour lines, which I think is pretty critical and a really great feature to have. So let me take a quick minute to explain why those contour lines and those maps are so important. If you're fishing in a random spot and you don't have like really good structure, for example, Palawan Wreck out of Redondo Beach would be a really good structure. And of course, a big significant structure like that is going to hold and attract fish. Now, if you don't have that, the next best place to go look for fish is where you have changes in elevation. Fish are like human beings. They're not gonna, want to live in the middle of nowhere. Like if you had your choice between living in the foothills of a nice area as opposed to the flat desert, you're going to choose the foothills. And the fish are just like that. So whenever you have contour lines that are kind of far apart, like right here, it means that it's pretty flat. And whenever you have lines that are really tightly packed, like right here, that means that it's either going to be a steep incline or a steep decline. And fish are going to gravitate toward changes in elevation. So here you're mostly flat stuff, and then you get some tight lines that again denote either a rise or a depression. And so this point right here could either be a mountain, an underwater mountain, or a really deep, steep depression. And the ledges to these, drop-offs and whatnot are often going to hold fish. And assuming this is a mountaintop, it might hold fish here, or if it's a big depression and the water is cold, they might be hunkered down in the deep troughs. So anyways, that's the basic gist of it. In essence, if you have a choice, don't spend your time around here, okay? Spend your time fishing around these areas. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna leave the harbor and probably stay within half a mile ashore, and our destination initially is gonna be Rat Beach and or Malaga Cove, which is over there. Going back to Google Earth, we're paddling south and we're crossing this barren stretch. So we're not spending time in this stretch fishing. We're going to get past this stretch and our destination is Malaga Cove and the kelp beds. But let me take the time here to relay some footage from the fish finder so you have an idea of what to expect if you choose to follow our route. This right there is semi-interesting. There are probably like 2-3 fish kind of hunkered down to the bottom. But again, it's such a small mark and probably not worth a drop. So again, you can stop and drop and try to target these individual fish. But generally speaking, there are bigger and more and better fish in the sea. So if you want to stop and try maybe one drop like here, yeah, sure, you can do it, but I wouldn't waste a lot of time on that particular mark. Now let me freeze the frame here and augment this with some thoughts as to why I think this is going to be a tough gig. So first of all, there's no structure on the bottom here that's going to hold these fish. And secondly, the crescent nature of these fish, even though these marks signal bigger fish, it means that these fish are moving. And with the cone, you don't know which direction they are coming from. So by the time you drop down 50 feet, your bait or your jig or whatever, these fish may no longer be here. So it's just a tough gig in general, and I wouldn't waste a lot of time here. Having said that, if you're trolling around, yeah, this might be a decent area to kind of focus your efforts on. So, maybe do laps around an area like this. Okay, so that's going to conclude commentary for this mostly unproductive stretch. And so we ended up here, and I have a really, really interesting observation. In the early part of this year, I guess like April, May, June, there was a lot of kelp, and there typically is a lot of kelp around here at the Malaga Cove area. And then around late August or September, I noted that virtually all of the kelp was gone. It was completely barren. And the theories as to why that happened, I'm not sure. Maybe the water warms up and the kelp kind of dies off and it comes back. It could be sea urchins. I don't know, but there was a drastic change in underwater landscape between the first half of the year and fall and beyond. So, and of course, if the kelp goes away, most of the fish are going to go away as well. So again, latter part of the year, maybe it's just this year, there was nothing here. Very interesting. Okay, so at this point, this video is running way too long, and I already get enough flack for not having like action, fish catching footage, and I'm sure, some people are bored to tears. So I'm gonna cut it off here, and then part 2 of the video is gonna cover what I think is the most productive area, which is kind of like the southwest area. So this is Palawan, and then you have the ledges of the canyon, which is good for rockfish. So I do hope that you come back for that, and if that is the case, we will see you soon.